This is the story of John Henry by Guy P. Johnson. Have you ever been just so determined to do something? I mean, just so determined. Nothing was going to get through it, and you're so determined that you would die for it. Well, see, this is the determination that John Henry had. See, he was a steel driver on the railroads, and see what a steel driver did? They would take just a hammer and then a rod with a little drill bit at the end, and they would hammer away at this rod into this rock. That way, they could build a tunnel through mountains, and that's how they made railroads through mountains. And he was the best steel driver on the C&O Railroad Company, and he was most noted for being able to take the 20-pound hammer in each hand, just hammer away at this rod. And people used to come from miles around just to see him do this. It turns out that at one time, two railroad companies came together, the C&O and this other railroad company, and they came to this place called Big Bend Tunnel. Now, this other railroad company, they were using a steam-driven power drill, and people said that it was the best invention. It would do 10 times more work than any other man. But John Henry made the remark that, he said that he could drill he could drive more steel than any other machine. He was just the best. And so they set up this contest, and the money was put up, and John Henry was to make $100 if he was to beat this steam drilling contest. So the day before the contest, John Henry and his friends were sitting there looking over this just giant machine. It had all sorts of gauges and gears. It was just covered with all different hoses. And then the captain of the construction crew came up and approached John. "Are you still going to go through that contest tomorrow?" said the captain. "Yes, sir," said John Henry. "You see, I know steam engines. I've used coal in them before, and I was just a man. And I know that I can beat that steam drill. I can drive more steel than that steam drill ever will." So the captain said, "Well, I guess you'll get your chance to prove that tomorrow." John Henry was, "I'll be here in the morning. But do you mind if I have my friend Little Bill as my shaker?" "Why, certainly," said the captain. And then Little Bill's face was lost with a prideful grin. And so they went off to rest for the next day. They came back the next morning to the work site, and the steam drill was in place with the two men there to heave the coal into the drill, and the engineer was also there. "Are you ready to go, John?" said the engineer. "Eyes ready, Captain," said John Henry. "On your mark, get set, go." Little Bill jumped up with that rod and placed it against the rock, and John Henry just began to hammer away. And then the steam drill started up, and the bang of the drill hitting the rocks, and the dust started, and smoke started to swell up. The contest was on. It was man against machine. And John Henry just sat there with a steady rhythm, just banging away at that rock, while the steam drill sat there and banged against the rock, drilling as fast as it could. John Henry was sitting there banging away with all his might, and Little Bill was turning the drill into the hole, trying to get every advantage that he could. And he kept looking over, watching the progress of the drill, and he noticed that they were behind. John Henry also noticed this too, so he told Little Bill to go get a 20-pound hammer. Little Bill ran over to the tool, grabbed the 20-pound hammer, drug it over to John, and as John rose up, he threw the old hammer down and grabbed the new one, and Little Bill grabbed the rod again. They began to pound away. And the hammer that he had just thrown down, the handle of it was so hot, it was glowing red, that it began to smolder and smoke, and then finally burst into flame. And John Henry just began to get a steady rhythm, just kept on hammering. But they were still behind. They just couldn't make up that time. So Little Bill ran over and grabbed two new 20-pound hammers. He came back, running back, grabbed the rod, handed the hammers to John Henry. He just began just hammering away at this rod. All his might, just in steady rhythm, just back and forth. And then the contest just went on for hours and hours. First, the steam drill would be ahead, and John Henry would pull ahead. And the steam drill would be ahead, and John Henry would come ahead. It just went on for hours and hours. John Henry just kept hammering away with those two hammers, not missing a stroke or not even missing a rod. Finally, the captain blew the whistle to end the contest, and then he measured the two rods, the two holes that had been dug, and the steam drill dug a hole that was 70 feet deep, and then John Henry's he measured, and he had dug a hole that was 20 feet deep, which made John Henry the victor. He received his $100 and then retired to his house with his wife, where she made his favorite meal, and they celebrated. But he told her that he had a funny feeling in his head that something had gone wrong, but he paid no attention to it, and right after dinner he immediately went to sleep. The next morning, his wife called to wake him up, but she received no answer. John Henry had died sometime during the night. The doctor said that a blood vessel had burst inside of his head. He was 34 years of age, but his legend will live on forever.
This is a story about Pecos Bill by Stephen Keller. Well, it all began when Pecos Bill's family decided that New England was just too crowded for them to be living in. So they all packed up and just moved west. Well, on the way, they had to pass by Pecos River, and they had to throw it. Pecos Bill decided to throw in his fishing pole. Well, as he did this, he felt a little nick at the end. Well, he found out that it was Texas' biggest trout in Texas. Well, it threw him overboard. It's a good thing that a coyote saw this, or to save Pecos Bill, and okay, so the coyote took him back to his family and showed them, they adopted him and showed him all the ways of living a wild life. Well, time went on, and Pecos Bill started growing and getting bigger and everything, and how he grew out of his clothes. Well, by this time, Pecos Bill really felt like a part of the wildlife. Well, one day he was sleeping in the bushes, and a cowboy came along named Chud. And he goes, "Excuse me, sir, why are you sleeping in the bushes with no clothes on?" And Pecos Bill tried to explain to him that he was a coyote. And he goes, "Oh, no, you're not. You're just a Texan, just like I am." Well, Pecos Bill decided to give life as a Texan a try. And so they went on. He bought some clothes from Chuck. And as they went on, a rattlesnake tackled Pecos Bill, and they fought for a while. And then Pecos Bill decided to squeeze by his neck or something, and all the poison dripped out. And then, before Pecos Bill could even catch his breath, a creature jumped on his back, and they started fighting in circles and around, and it looked like a dust storm was gathering up. And everybody came over to see who this was, who was living after they fought these two creatures, because nobody's ever lived. And Pecos Bill asked Young Smith, who was the leader of their gang. He goes, "Well, I was, but now you are." And so now Pecos Bill is this leader of this gang all of a sudden, and he tried everything. But then all of a sudden he realized everybody had a horse except for him. And so he asked Young Smith where he could get a horse, and he told him that there's a horse up in the mountains named Lightning that everybody's tried to get, but he's real wild and nobody could chase him because he's so fast. Well, Pecos Bill went up to the mountains and see if he could find this horse. And he searched and searched for days, and then finally he ran into the horse. And so he went to try to get him, and he started chasing through the canyons and hills and everything. And finally he just leaped onto his back and started riding the horse. Well, the horse didn't like it very much, started bucking, trying to buck Pecos off and anything. He just wouldn't fall off, so he finally broke the horse down and got him settled down, and they became really good friends afterwards. Well, then he went to Chuck's barn, and they were having a little get-together, I guess, and he saw a girl named Sue that he thought was really pretty that he wanted to marry. And so he asked Sue to marry him. And she goes, "Well, yes, on 2 accounts. If you find me a wedding dress and let me ride Lightning to the ceremony." Well, he said, all right. And so the first one wasn't too bad. He rode off to Dallas and got Sue a wedding gown. And then he came back, but the second favor wasn't so easy. Right when Sue got on the back of Lightning's back, he bugged her off into the sky. She went up into the moon and around and everything. And when she's coming back down, Pegasus went over there to see if he can catch her. Well, it didn't happen so well because since she got bugged up so high, she just hit the ground and bounced off and grabbed Pegasus' bills, and it just took him up with her. Well, here these two are up in the sky, way up, and they start to fall again and land on Pegasus' wagon, his parents' wagon. And he finds out and he tells her that there's going to be a wedding, and they live happily ever after.
One winter's day, Lord Bear was sitting on a stump feeling mighty hungry. Just then, a fox walked by with a long string of fish. The bear thought those fish looked mighty delicious. So he asked the fox, "Fox, where'd you get those fish? Did you steal those, son?" The fox really nervously said, No, Lord Bear, I caught them." "Well, if they're so easy to catch, then teach me." Well, the fox really didn't catch them. He stole them from the site next door, but he didn't want to tell the bear that because he knew that the bear would go take them back, because this bear's a really nice bear. So he sat there and he sat there and he thought and thought, and he could not think of a way to tell him to catch the fish. So finally he said, "Go upon the ice, cut a hole in the ice, and stick your tail in there. And the fish will start biting at your tail. And whenever they do, just keep letting them bite, because the longer you keep your tail in there, the more fish you'll catch." So he went, he did exactly as the fox said, and he went and he put his tail in the water. So he sat there and he sat there, and it was very cold. And he felt all these little bites and everything, and he goes, "All right, I'm getting me some fish. I'm going to be able to eat now." So he sat there till his tail got frozen in. But of course the bear did not know that his tail got frozen in the water. So he just sat there, and he remembered that the fox had told him to pull it out as hard as he can so he can get all the fish out. So he sat there and he pulled out real hard, but he left half of his tail in there because it was frozen in. So to this day, that is why the bear goes around with a stumpy tail.
Okay, this is about Pecosville. It's called The Three Bad Men, and it's by Harold W. So, you might think that Pecosville has no end. He does. But those enemies that faced him, they met their end fast. But those ones that stayed a safe distance away, they nurtured their hate, were the smartest of all. There were 3 of them, and they got together plotting revenge upon Pecos Bill. But everybody knew that Pecos Bill was unstoppable. So they planned on getting back at him by killing his cougar. So one morning they went out to his ranch and hid behind a hill. There they rounded up some of his cattle and started branding them. But over the hill they heard a big whimper. And when they looked over, they saw the cougar killing a bear there, and the cougar started eating the bear. So they decided to go ahead and get back at Bill right now. And so they pulled out their guns, aimed, and fired. But the cougar just swished his tail like nothing had happened. And so they unloaded their guns on him, and still nothing happened. He still started eating. He still kept eating. So they pulled out their other guns, seeing that they were 2 guns, villains. And they unloaded those guns on him. Still nothing happened. Then, through the whole night, they unloaded their guns on him. Nothing happened. That morning, he just lay down and went to sleep. So one of the villains walked up to him, pulled out a knife, and cut off his head. And they thought that they were real smart, but their deed was rewarded because That same morning, the cougar walked up to the ranch, carrying his head in his mouth. And Pegasus, seeing this, got scared and took the head from the cougar's mouth and stuck it back on his neck. And then Beanhole, the cook, took sourdough and put it over the neck so that the cat would be better. And the cat did get better. So he put him on a strict diet of beans and sourdough biscuits. Bill was angry by now, so he got dressed, he put on his firing pistol, and rode out after those bad guys. When he caught up with them, he started talking to him. And he gave him enough time to pull out their artillery, and then he shot them all. They just lay there dead. He looked down at them and said, "I thought you had more brains than that. You just unlucky bad guy." And then the rest of his friends rode up, and Gunsmith got off the horse and asked Bill what happened. But one-eyed, three-fingered Ike got off his horse and saw the calves over there and said, "These men were cattle rustlers." And Gunsmith said, "Yeah, they are, aren't they?" And so Bill rounded up his cattle and went home.
Genevieve Massimiliano or something like that. Once upon a time, there was a poor family. They were very, very poor, and the father said to himself one day, "What if I were to go and steal the pig from the priest?" Well, the father knew that the priest had a pigsty with a big, fat pig in it. So he went and took the pig, and he killed the pig. And he cut it up into little pieces so all his family could eat. Well, the following day, the little boy, the smallest boy in the family, he went out for a walk, and while he was walking, he sang to himself and hummed to himself. The words were, "My father took the pig from the priest and killed it." Well, the priest happened to have been walking down the same path as the little boy. The priest shouted out, "What was that you were saying?" "Well, I was only telling the truth, sir." "Well, repeat it." The little boy was scared. He goes, "I can't do that, sir." The priest goes, Repeat it, little boy." "Well, I can't, sir. It'll get some people in trouble." "Well, just repeat it." "Well, it's only the truth." "Well, then you can say it tomorrow at Sunday church during Mass." "Well, I can't, sir. I just can't. I can't go dressed like this." "Well, I will buy you a new suit and you can go." So the priest bought him a new suit. And the little boy, he was happy he got the new suit, so he went to Mass, and right before Mass he told the priest that he was there and he was ready to sing. So the priest told the audience, "Listen, there's a little boy here to tell the truth of what he was singing on the path yesterday afternoon." He turns to the little boy and he says, "Here, get up into the pulpit." So the little boy climbs into the pulpit and he says, "The priest and my mother are lovers, and glory to God, my father knows nothing about it." The priest shouts, "That's not true. That is not what you were saying to stay on the path." "But yes it is, sir. That's what I was saying." "No, it's not. That's not the truth." "Yes it is, sir. I promise." And the rest of the crowd and the little boy, they just all started laughing.
My folktale is Johnny Appleseed by Walter Blair. Back in Massachusetts on the day Johnny was born, it was a stormy May rainstorm, and it was raining cats and a fair number of dogs too. Well, when the sun came out, Johnny made his first big cry. When he was little, he always liked apple seeds, and the nurse that was taking care of Johnny and his mother claimed that she would pick him up every day And when he was first born, and he wanted to see, all he wanted to see was the apple blossom. Well, she said, yeah, I picked him up all the time, and all he wanted to do is just like he put his paws out and he just wanted to pick those apple blossoms. Well, we all know that when he was 40 minutes old, he didn't want to do that. Sounds kind of fishy to us. So when he started being a little boy, his mom kind of was getting concerned about him, that he was studying too much on apple blossoms. And so she decided to get him to study something else. She said, Sonny, I think that you need to start getting into something else besides apple blossoms and apple tree. How about getting into plants and animals? I'll take you to the woods and you can see everything. So Johnny agreed, and they all went to Appleseed. Went to the jungle in the woods to study all the plants and animals. But finally, as a matter of fact, he got into these. He started getting into everything. Well, his dad was kind of worried that he was getting too much into apples and into animals, and so he decided to get him into the Bible because he was a preacher. And so he went up to him and said, Sonny, I think you ought to get into some apples. I think you ought to get out of those apples. Maybe you should get into the Bible. They've got a lot of animals, like in Noah's Ark and stuff. So Johnny agreed, and so they went. And he started, so when he graduated from college, from Harvard College, he just, his favorite books were always Ace of Sabres and Bob. But when he started, so he decided later on that he would go into something else. And he decided to go on a mission. He would start planting apple trees all over the Middle West. And so when he started doing this, he didn't want money from any of them. He just wanted everybody to have apple seed trees and to have apples to have. And he didn't take money from anybody. But everybody knows the only reason he'd do this was for money. But he'd say, money? Money for this? And snap his horny fingers. I don't want money. All I want is for everyone to have something to do. I don't want money from anybody, he'd say. So finally, later in his life, he still went through everything, animals and apples. So later on, as he was old and gray, he couldn't hardly do anything, and he died on a stormy winter night. And so the preacher that was preaching that night said that everybody will know this, and that Johnny Appleseed will live on forever. And so finally, they all came to an end, and everybody. So if you ever get to go anywhere, be sure and you get to see that apple tree.
Okay, my story is called Old Storm Along the Deepwater Sailorman, and it's by Frank Shea. Old Storm Along? Sure, I remember Old Storm Along. I was first apprentice on a ship, and then I was second when he was on the Courier out of Boston. Courier was a mighty fine ship. Don McKay built it because he found one man who could handle her the way she was supposed to be handled. That man was Storm Along. Stormy for short. Why, Stormy was the first sailor to have the letters A.B. before his name. Actually, they were just his initials. Alfred Wolfe taught Storm Along. But the first time his captain saw him, he said, ABS, able-bodied soldier. By your size and strength, all sailors should be measured. And it still makes me pretty mad when I see all these little hornswogglers running around with letters A.B. after their names. Well, Stormy was like any other sailor. He was loyal to the ship until a big one came along. But his biggest complaint about sailing was that no ship was built for a full-size man like him. So one day, when we pulled him to harbor, he just jumped off deck. I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "Farming. I'm going to take this oar and put it over my shoulder. I'm going to keep walking in a straight line until I get to somewhere." And this hair-legger says, "What's that funny-looking stick over your shoulder?" Right there, I'm going to stop and I'm going to plant taters. Well, it didn't take him more than not even a year to realize that he was meant for sailing and not for farming. Well, he hadn't even been back for 6 months when he decided that the Lady of the Sea wasn't good enough for him.
He wanted a bigger ship, and one day he saw it in Boston Harbor. He sat there gawking at it for hours and hours, it seems like. Oh, man, it must take 1,000,000 sailors to man her. Yes, sir, 1,000,000. Well, that night, so I hear, he jumped overboard and swam right over that ship. That was the last I saw of him for a while. Well, at least until I got my job as second on the Courier. Turns out the Courier was that same big ship that he went overboard for. That Courier was one big ship. I mean, these officers were riding around on horseback just to get to the other side. And couldn't even pull into harbor because the ship was too big. So we had to ride out all the storms. Reminds me of one storm in particular. Storm somewhere in the North Atlantic, I think. We got knocked off course, and we finally figured out where we were. It was in the North Sea, and that was bad. See, the North Sea was too little for us to turn around in, and we were headed straight for the English Channel, and the English Channel was too small for us to get through. So the officer on the horseback were running around and, "Man the lifeboats! Man the lifeboats!" But old Stormy, he sat there at the wheel, looked down, man on deck, said, "Better send some hands overboard and soap the sides. Put a little extra on the starboard side." And his plan worked. We slipped through there smooth as honey. Came awfully close though. Scraped all the soap off the starboard side. Cliffs are still white to this day. And if you look down into the ocean, the waves are still foaming from the soap. But I'm telling you, I owe my life to old Alfred Bulltop Stormalone.
I'm here to tell y'all a story about Johnny Appleseed. Now, one thing, he's different from Pecos Bill, Paul Bunyan, because he was real. Now, what makes him so real is, well, his real name was John Chapman. He was born on a rainy day in May. When he was born, after he was just 40 minutes old, nurse took him to the window for him to see his first rainbow. He looked up, saw the rainbow gleaming down right on the Chapman apple tree. From that day on, John Chapman loved apple trees. Well, as he grew up, people think he got a little crazy in the head. Some people think that he got kicked in the head by a horse he was doctoring, and others think that he got malaria and just went like crazy. But no one really knew the truth. You see, John Appleseed, now Johnny Appleseed, went from as far south as Tennessee and as far west as Rocky Mountains just planting apple seeds. He would go during cider making season and picking out the seeds of the mashed up apples. He collected thousands and thousands of them, just planted all over the place. Well, after a while, people just think he got a little crazy because he planted milkweed near Ohio, thinking it would cure malaria. Well, turns out it didn't cure malaria, it just stunk up the place. But people still think he's crazy. But as soon as he died, Sam Houston stood up and said, "Johnny Appleseed was a good old man. Someday people will think he's blessed."
The name of my story is The Wonderful Tar Baby by Mark Twain. You see, this story was originated during the Civil War, and all the slave people used to tell their kids about the Tar Baby story, among many others. Here's this Tar Baby story. Here's how it goes. "Uncle Remus, didn't that old fox ever catch the rabbit?" "Well, Sonny, we don't know. You see, it all started out when that Brer Rabbit, he just tried to trick that Brer Fox into just giving him some calamus root. And of course, Brer Fox, he didn't think that was very nice. So one day, he whipped up this contraption, and he called it a Tar Baby. He took some turpentine, and he took some tar, and he put a head on that little baby, and he stuck it out in the middle of the road. And then just before that Brer Rabbit come up, he jumped into the bushes just as fast as he could. He didn't have to wait long until Brer Rabbit see that Tar Baby, and he say, 'Howdy, Tar Baby. Can't you speak?' And the rabbit, he just
confused. He didn't know what to think because that tar baby, she ain't say nothing. And Fox, he just lay low. And then Brer Rabbit, he comes up closer and he says, "If you's deaf, I'm kin to yell louder." So he did. He was just yelling and screaming at that little tar baby, and she ain't say nothing. And of course, that Brer Fox, he lay low. Finally, he got mad. And he says, "I'm gonna teach you how to talk to respectable folks." So he just knocked him side the head, blip, and he broke that molasses jug that he made for a head. Sure enough, he got mad. He was yelling and yelling, and of course, he was laying low. Then he says, "If you don't let me go, I'm gonna butt you." And sure enough, he did. He lost his feet and his head in the same way. Oh, by then, that Brer Fox, he was just laughing and rolling on the ground. And when he got kind of straightened up a little, he comes up to the rabbit and he says, "You ready to come home with me to eat dinner? I think your sassy mouth will be good enough." Of course, nobody knows what happened to the rabbit. They think maybe the Brer Fox come and let him loose, but nobody knows. It's for the kin to know. But right now, as far as we know, Tar Baby and that Brer Rabbit are still stuck there.
My story is about the Weeping Woman and is written by William N. Hudson. One day, a long time ago, there was this lady who had 2 children. She did not love them. She neglected them and mistreated them. Well, one day, her little girl came up to her and said, "Mommy, I'm hungry, and Bob is cold." And the lady said, "I don't care. Go find something to eat on your own. There's a blanket for claws. Go get it. I have a party to go to, and I'm not missing it because of you two." So she went on to her party, and one day her children died. She didn't care. She went on with her happy way of life, going to dances and parties, and doing all the stuff she did. Well, then she got sick, and she died too. And she did not confess her sins or repent the ill treatment of her children. And now they see her near the Colorado River around Austin. And then she's there always, crying for her children. And they think she was there. They think she's there because she drowned her children in the river one day.
Okay, ours is called Carol the Carman, and it's by Kevin Duncan.
That can.
Yeah. Okay. Once there was a man named Carol the Carman, and he used to deliver butter to different areas of the different towns. One day, a man came up to Carol, and he said, "Beware, there are halfway men trying to take money away from people coming down the road. So please beware." And so Carol, being cautious, he went and put his coins and his money in his oat bag to the horse.
As he was passing along, the robbers did come upon him. They said, "Stand and deliver." And he said, "I have none." So they searched him. They found no gold. He was still in dread after the robbers searched through. So he jumped back on his horse and he's riding towards the halfway house. The halfway house is where the Carmens stay, halfway between their towns and the places they deliver. He's staying there and he completely forgot about his money. He just ran inside, this place they knew him, so they just served him dinner. He was halfway through dinner when he remembered that his gold was still in his bag, his little oat bag for the horse. And so he runs back outside, and the little boy that's taking care of the horse goes, "Where's the little oat bag?" And he goes, what oat bag? He goes, the oat bag, how the oats in it for the horse. He said, well, the horse is eating them all. He says, oh no. So, he knew what he had to do. He had to stay in the stable all night long, wait for the, yeah. And he stayed there all night long. And eventually he got almost everything he had back except for like 5 or 6 pounds. People in the house were dying to know what was going on. The next morning, the man of the house came down. He washed up the dinner.
The man thought, that bag would be good for me to take. That horse would be good for me to take. That way it'll make money for me. So he offered to buy the horse from the man, from Carol, in return to give him horses and some money, 100 pounds. So Carol went back. The man made a deal with him, and Carol took the horses and the money, and the man took the horse.
Well, as time passed, the man, he got what little was left inside the horse, but eventually the bank broke. There was no money left in the horse. So, he eventually, the man of the halfway house told his wife about this. She scolded him day and night. Where is this money? How could you have lost it like this? You must go back and get it. And eventually he just got fed up, broke down, went looking for Carol to get his money back.
So the man came to Carol one day wanting his money, and so Carol invited him to come and eat dinner. So when they went to go eat dinner, he pulled out this pot, and the man thought the pot was really useful. So the man offered money for the pot, and he took off with the pot and gave Carol the money. So the next day, the man came back unsatisfied with the pot because he said it wasn't useful anymore. So he offered him to come back and eat.
So he's telling me, this pot's useful. So what he does is, the halfway man's not looking. He takes a pot and boils some potatoes in it. But then he didn't see any fire. So all he's got is this pot with potatoes in it. He said, well, it boils from within, but you have to know how to do it. He says, okay. And he's trying to trick him into taking the pot for the money, right?
And then, so while the man was looking at the pot, he told his wife, go and please go up there and get my best whiskey bottle. And
see, secretly before, what they'd done is taken a dead goose and shoved, somewhere down here, and the wife, she was like, what whiskey? And he said, the whiskey up in my room. And she said, there's no whiskey up there. And he said, you drank it? And she said, yeah. And and then he got mad and he grabbed his knife and carved, and he stabbed her right here, and it made it look like blood was going everywhere, but it really wasn't. And the halfway man, he just got scared and jumped up and took off. Never saw him again.
Have you ever been ripped off? Or have you ever ripped anyone off? If you have, you can relate to the story of The Coyote and the Bear by Diane Good. Once upon a time, Kuide the bear and Tuwade the coyote chanced to meet in a certain spot. And after they sat there and talked for a while, the bear said, friend Coyote, look at this fine land. What do you say we farm it, and then we can share the crop and share the labor? The coyote thought well of it, so they decided that they would plant potatoes. And after they sat there and talked for a while, the bear said, Coyote, I have devised a way we can divide the crop equally. I will take what grows below the ground, and you can take what grows above it. And so the coyote thought about it for a while and decided that seemed fair. And so they planted their crop, they tended to it all spring, and when harvest time came, the coyote went and got the tops of the potatoes that was above the ground, which were roots, and took them home. And then later the bear came and dug up the potatoes, which were nice and round. And so when the coyote saw that the bear had the nice round potatoes, he said, Bear, you have these nice round potatoes which are good to eat, and all I have are these roots which neither my wife nor I can eat. And the bear said, well, there's nothing I can do. We made a deal. So the coyote was pretty much mad, dissatisfied, but there was nothing he could say. So when the next year came and the bear and the coyote met again, the bear said, "Friend coyote, let's plant this fine land again. This year we will plant corn. And since last year you were dissatisfied, this year you can have what grows below the ground, and I will take what grows above the ground." And so the coyote thought that this seemed really fair, and so they planted the corn and tended to it all spring long. And when harvest time came, the bear came and got the stalks and ears of corn, which were good to eat, and the coyote came and dug up his roots, and he was very much dissatisfied again, but there was nothing he could do because they made a deal. And so when winter came, the coyote was walking along, and he saw the bear sitting on an ice pond eating a fish. And so he went up to the bear and asked him how he got the fish. And the bear said, "Well, I fished for it in the water. I broke a hole in the ice." And so the bear just sat there and kept eating his fish. And the coyote was about to die because he was really hungry. And he said, "Well, will you show me how to do it?" And so the bear said, "Well, yes." So he punched a hole in the water and said, "Now stick your tail in it and wait for a bite." So the coyote stuck his tail in the water, and he left it there. The bear sat there and watched the ice form around his tail. And when it was completely frozen, he said, "Now, you've got it, pull." And the coyote pulled and pulled and pulled, but he couldn't go nowhere. And the bear just laughed and laughed and laughed until his sides hurt. So then he got his fish and went home. He just left the coyote sitting there. And the coyote had to stay until the springtime came and the water thawed. He was really cold and really hungry and almost starved to death. And so now, from that day on, anytime he sees the bear, he will not speak to him, even though the bear says politely, "Hi, my friend, Tuwade."
Hi, I'm Leslie Beeford, and I'm telling the Willa Duas Uncle Remus story retold by Miriam Coleman. And this is about what Briar Rabbit does one day. "I'm tired of eating cabbages," said Briar Rabbit one morning. "And I'm tired of eating carrots, spargrass, and beans. I'd like to stick my teeth in something sweet." With that, he took a notion to run on down to Briar Bear's house and see what they had there. While he was lippity-clicking along, who should he meet but Briar Bear's son? Strolling along beside him was Mrs. Bear, and shuffling along right behind him was their two children, Cubs and Clips. "Howdy," said Briar Rabbit, real polite. "Howdy," said Briar Bear, just as polite. And Cubs and Clips, they say howdy too. Briar Rabbit sat down on his hunkers till they passed by. That bear family has something good to eat at their house. They're as fat and as round as butterballs. They must have something tasty in their cupboard, and I'm going to have a look at it right now. He took a shortcut through the bushes and got to Briar Bear's house while no one was there. He opened the door and he starts sniffing and snuffling around. He poking there, he poking here. He gobbled a little of this, he nibbled a little of that. Then he spies a honey pot way up on a high shelf. And he starts scrambling for it when pow! It came splashing down all over his head. Just one more spoonful and he'd be drowned. He'd lick up a big mouthful and then he'd say, "What'll I do now? I can't stay here or Briar Bear will catch me. And I'm ashamed to go outside because the other animals will see me." Well, by and by, Briar Rabbit made his way outside. But the honey made his feet sort of slippery. And the first thing you know, he'd fall down right in Briar Bear's front yard. Aw, and roll over in the leaves. The leaves stay stiff. And the more he'd kick and scuff around, the more they stick. He stood up and tried to shake them off, but they wouldn't work. Well, by that time, he was the scariest looking and scariest sounding creature in the whole country. Well, who should happen along right then but old Sis Cow. She took one look at Briar Rabbit and she went off a mooing and a booing like she'd seen a ghost. Then old Turkey Buzzard comes right out of the sky, and he flopped himself right back up in the sky. Briar Rabbit laughed. Then who should he see strolling along but Briar Fox? He decided to scare him. So he jumps out of the bushes and goes, "I'm the Willa-Do-Us, and you're the one I'm after. I think I'll skin you just for fun. You better run, you better run. 'Cause I'm the Willa-Do-Us, and you're the one I'm after." Well, sure, that's just what that fox did. He threw down his cane and ran through the forest going, "Oh, oh, Lordy, oh!" Briar Rabbit just sit down and laugh and laugh. Then he decided to scare that bear family when they got back. So he sit down in the shade of a tree and wait for him. Pretty soon he falls asleep. Then the sun moves around and he wasn't sleeping in the shade no more. He is sleeping in the sun. The sun dries up all the honey and the fleece fall off. But Friar Rabbit didn't know that, of course. Pretty soon, the first thing he heard was the bear family tromping home. So he jumps up and goes, I'm the Will-o'-the-Wisp, and you're the one I'm after. I think I'll skin you just for fun. You better run, 'cause I'm the Will-o'-the-Wisp, and you're the one I'm after. Well, the bear family just stood there and gaped. Then Briar Bear started laughing. Will-o'-the-Wisp? What's that, you crazy rabbit? What's all that dried up stuff all over you? You're the frowsiest looking creature I ever did see. Well, Briar Rabbit looked down and saw that leaves were covering him no more. Just about that time, Briar Bear saw that his front door was wide open and there was honey everywhere. He said, You scoundrel, you ate all my honey. And he tried to make a grab for Briar Rabbit, but Briar Bear wasn't made to move very fast, and Briar Rabbit was already out there like a streak of lightning. He jumps in upon him and said, Well, I may not be the scurriest creature on earth, but I sure am the smartest and the fastest, and I have all this dried up honey in this pond now, till pretty soon he was all slicked up and as good as new.
This is a haunting tale of a brave Southern boy. The title of it is Jumped Off in My Sleep by M.A. Jackendorf. Once there was a family and they lived in a big house and they were really rich. They lived just the same as other folks. Pretty soon, they all started dying off, one by one. That's just the way things go. So this great big house was left empty with no one living in it. All kinds of terrible things were heard going on through the night. All kinds of terrible things happening in it. No one wanted to live in it. So the distant relatives to whom it belonged boarded up the windows and boarded up the doors and put a great big sign out in the front yard that said, Whoever can stay in this house for 3 nights straight can keep it and everything that's in it. But no one dared. No one, except one day, a young boy walked by, and he thought to himself, I can stay in that house for all 3 nights and get everything in it and what it's worth, 'cause I'm not scared of anything. So he went inside, he sat down in a big fire, he started making some soup and bread. And all of a sudden, he heard this awful hollering voice saying, I'm gonna drop down, I'm gonna drop down. And there was these 2 legs hanging down from the chimney. And the boy said, Fine, you be a dropping down. Just take care not to drop into my soup. And so the legs flopped down on the wooden floor and just lay there still. The boy went on eating his soup and bread. Pretty soon later, 2 arms came hanging down. Same awful screeching voice was once again heard. I'm gonna drop down. I'm gonna drop down. Fine, you be a dropping down. Just take care not to drop into my soup. And so the arms fell down to the floor, just like the legs. But the boy went on eating his soup and bread, and then the middle part came hanging down. The same awful screeching voice was once again heard. I'm gonna drop down. I'm gonna drop down. Fine. You be a dropping down. Just take care not to drop into my soup. And then he thought, well, gee, all that's left now is a head, and it'll make a perfect man. And no sooner than he said that, and a head was hanging down from the chimney. He heard this awful hollering voice. I'm gonna drop down. I'm gonna drop down. I'm gonna drop down. And the shrieking went on and on. Suddenly, the boy just couldn't take it no more. Would you quit your hollering and just drop down? Just take care not to drop into my soup. And the head fell down and fit with the rest of the body just like a pea in a pod. And a man, for the man it was, sat up and stared at the boy. And he said, Sir, you want some of my soup and bread? But the man just stared at the boy and didn't say nothing. You ain't much for manners, are you, mister? And the boy went on and finished his soup and bread. But after he was done finishing his soup and bread, he went and made a nice bed on the floor, pillows and blankets. And then he thought to himself, I'm going to be polite to this guy. And he looked at the old man and said, Mister, there ain't much here, but what there is, I'll share it with you, if you like.
But the old man just stared at him and didn't say nothing. Well, fine. You can just sleep on the hard, cold floor. And the boy laid down and went to sleep. And before you know it, there's this awful voice as loud as thunder. Boy, the man said to him, boy, since you ain't scared of me, I'll reward you for it. You've been real polite to me. Offer me your soup and your bread. And that shows me you got a kind heart. You can say I'm awful, say I'm a haunt. Well, I ain't. I just can't rest. I have to watch over the treasure. Since you ain't scared of me, I want to give this treasure to you. So he took him down into the cellar and gave him a shovel and told him to dig here. The boy dug and he dug and he dug. And finally he hit an iron chest and opened it up and it was full of treasure. You can have this and all that's in it. Now I can rest and go to my grave. And so the old man floated away. And the boy went back upstairs and went to sleep. And he stayed there for the next 2 nights. And he got the house and everything that was in it and the treasure too. And finally he met this Alabama girl and they got married and had kids and was happy for the rest of their days. And that's the end of our story.
Do you know anyone that is so smart in school? They make great grades, but when it comes to life and common sense, they're stupid. They don't know anything. While other people, they don't know much in school. They get all right grades, but they have a lot of common sense. They seem real smart. Well, if you know anyone like this, then you can relate to them. The Lion Makers, which is an Indian folk tale by Milton Rugoff. In a certain town, there were 4 Brahmins who lived in friendship. Now, 3 of them had reached the far shore of scholarship, but they lacked common sense, while another one found scholarship distasteful. He had nothing but sense. Well, one day, the 4 met for consultation. "What use is our attainments?" said they, "if we do not travel, win the favor of kings, and acquire money? Whatever we do, let us all travel." But when they had gone a little way, the eldest of them said, "One of us, dullard, the 4th is a dullard, having nothing but sense. Now, nobody gains the favorable attention of kings by simple sense without scholarship. Therefore, let us not share our earnings with him. He shall turn back and go home." So the second said, "My intelligent friend, you lack scholarship. Please go home." But the third said, No, this is no way to act. For we have played together since we were little boys. Come, my noble friend, we will share what we earn with you." With this agreement, they continued on their journey. And in a forest, they found the bones of a dead lion. Whereupon one of them said, "A good opportunity to test the ripeness of our scholarship. Here lies a creature, dead. Let us use the scholarship we've honestly won to bring it to life." So the first said, "I can assemble a skeleton." And the second said, "I can give it the skin, flesh, and blood." And the third said, "And I can give it life." So the first attached the skeleton together, and the second provided the skin, flesh, and blood. But when the third was intent on giving it the breath of life, the man of sense advised against it, saying, "This is a lion. If you bring it to life, he will surely kill us all." "You simpleton," said the other, "it is not I who will reduce scholarship to a nullity." "In that case," came the reply, "wait a moment, while I climb this convenient tree." When this had been done, the lion was brought to life, rose up, and killed all 3. But the man of sense, after the lion had gone elsewhere, climbed down and went home. And that is why I say, scholarship is less than sense. Therefore, seek intelligence. Senseless scholars in their pride made a lion, then they died.
This is our story, The Great Big Turnip, and it's traditional Russian. Once upon a time in Russia, there was an old man who planted some turnip seeds. Each year he grew wonderful turnips, but this year he was especially proud of one. He left it in the ground longer than the rest, for it kept growing bigger and bigger, and everyone commented that they had never seen one quite so large. One day he decided he had enough time to pull it up, so he went and pulled on the great big turnip's leaf. He pulled and pulled, but it just wouldn't come out of the ground. So he called his wife out to come and help him. The old woman pulled the old man, and the old man pulled the turnip, but still it didn't come out of the ground. So the young woman called on the granddaughter to come and help. The granddaughter pulled the old woman pulled the old man, and the old man pulled the turnip, but it still wouldn't come out of the ground. So the granddaughter called to the dog to come and help pull out the great big turnip. The dog pulled the granddaughter pulled the old woman pulled the old man, and the old man pulled the turnip, but still it wouldn't come out of the ground. So the dog called on the cat to come and help, and the cat pulled on the dog pulled on the granddaughter pulled on the old woman, and the old woman pulled on the old man. The old man pulled on the turnip, but it still didn't come out of the ground. So the cat called on a mouse to come and help. The mouse pulled the cat pulled the dog pulled the granddaughter pulled the old woman pulled the old man, and the old man pulled the turnip. Together they pulled and pulled. Suddenly the turnip came out of the ground, and they all fell over.
Now this here is the story of Brer Rabbit's cool-ass swing. Now Brer Rabbit, he is an ornery cuss. He make you do something you didn't even think you would do in your life. Well, Mr. Man, he have himself a fine garden. And every day Brer Rabbit, he visit Mr. Man's garden and destroy the latest thing in it. Well, Mr. Man, he plumb wore out with old Brer Rabbit, so he set a trap for Brer Rabbit down alongside the big road. Now one day when Mr. Man was going to the crossroads, he looked in his trap, and sure enough, there's the Brer Rabbit. So he take the Brer Rabbit and he tie him high on the limb of the sweet gum tree and let him swing there until he come back and fetch him home for his dinner. Well, presently, long came Brer Wolf, and he say, "Gosh almighty, Brer Rabbit, what are you doing up there?" And the Brer Rabbit, he say, "This here's just my cool-ass swing. I just taking a fine swing this morning, Brer Wolf." And the Brer Wolf, he look at Brer Rabbit and he lick his lips, and Brer Wolf, he say, "I got you fast, Brer Rabbit, now I'm gonna eat you up." And so the Brer Rabbit, he say, "Okay, Brer Wolf, you just close your eyes and open your mouth, and I'll jump plumb into your mouth." And the Brer Wolf, he nodded, and he turned up his head and opened his mouth and shut his eyes. And the Brer Rabbit, he dig in his pocket and pull out some pepper, and he plumb threw the pepper into the Brer Wolf's mouth. And the Brer Wolf, he start coughing and choking, and he strike off for home as fast as he can go. The Brer Rabbit, he swing this away in the wind, and he swing that away in the wind. He swing this away in the wind, and he swing that away in the wind. Now then, Brer Squirrel came along, and he say, "For the Lord, Brer Rabbit, what you done to yourself this time?" And the Brer Rabbit, he say, "It's just my cool-ass swing. Just taking a fine swing this morning." And the Brer Squirrel, he look at it, and he think it'd be pretty fun. So he say, "Brer Rabbit, why don't you let me have a swing? It looks like it'd be a good time." And the Brer Rabbit, he just sit back and cross his arms like he's fanning himself on the front porch, and he say, "Brer Squirrel, I'd let you have a swing on my swing because I think you do me proud." And the Brer Squirrel, he got up there and he helped the Brer Rabbit get down. And then the Brer Rabbit, he tied the Brer Squirrel fast on the cord and let him swing there. And the Brer Rabbit, he say, "Well, Brer Squirrel, I go down to the stream and I'll get you a fresh drink and you can swing till I come back." And the Brer Squirrel, he say, "Well, take your time, Brer Rabbit." And Brer Rabbit, he took his time. He strike off for home as fast as he could go. He didn't care how long the Brer Squirrel swing there. And then presently here come Mr. Man walking down the road. And then when he see Brer Squirrel, he plumb astonished. He stopped short and he say, "Well, Brer Rabbit, I heard a many stories of you playing tricks on people, but I never hear yourself turning into a squirrel. But it was powerful kind of you to give me a squirrel dinner to eat." So Mr. Man, he cut the Brer Squirrel down and he take him home and cook him for his dinner.
This is an African folktale called Anansi the Spider. Now, Anansi wasn't an ordinary spider, for he wanted to own all the stories in the land. So one day, he decided to go talk to the chief god. The chief gods were the chief of everybody, but the gods could do magic. So one day he went up to the chief god and he said, "Let me own all the stories." The chief god just laughed at that idea, but he decided to give it a try. But first, you must do three things. First, you must go
bring me a jar full of live bees. Then bring me an animal, a tiger. Then bring me a long, long snake. And Nancy was very excited about this because he knew that he could get this done. The next day he got a jar, and he went to the place where the most bees would be. He set it down, and he said, "The bees cannot fill up this jar." "No, they can't." "Yes, they can." "No, they can't." And the bees flew up and said, "Why, Nancy, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, it has been said that you bees cannot fill up this jar." And the bees said, "Well, of course we can." So they filled up the jar, and Nancy quickly put the lid on it and carried it to the chief god's house. The next day, he got a bag and put it in front of a large cave. He got inside and said, "I can see all the most beautiful sights from this bag. Oh, I can see the most beautiful sights." Right then the lion roared, "Let me see the most beautiful sights." So he got inside the bag, and Nancy quickly tied it up and carried it to the chief god's house. Then he got a long, long stalk and carried it to find a snake. He found the snake and said, "Snake, it has been said that you are not long as this stalk, but I think you are." So he measured him, but there was a problem. He would not stay still. So he tied the snake to the stalk and carried him to the chief god's house. Well, the chief god could not believe what he had seen, but he had to keep his wish. So he said, "From now on, all the stories in this land will belong to Nancy the spider. We have just heard one."
Okay, this is The Pancake by George Webb Dyson, and the setting is in a cottage with a mother and her 7 children. Once upon a time, there was a good woman who had 7 hungry children, and she was frying a pancake for them. It was a sweet milk pancake, and there it lay in the pan, bubbling and frizzling so thick and good. It was a sight for the sore children's eyes to see. So they all were all round and about, and they looked on as the good man behind them looked on with them. "Oh, Mother, please, may I have a bit of the pancake? Oh, please, I'm so hungry," said one child. And the rest of them, "Oh, yes, yes, please, Mom, please." And so they were all very hungry, one more prettily than the other. They all begged. "Yes, yes, children, you may have some. All of y'all may have some. But first let the pancake sit and then flip itself and tan on the other side. Then when it is cooked, y'all all may have some. But only look how thick and happy it lies in there." When the pancake heard this, it got scared, and then it tried to flip itself over and out of the pan. But instead it just flipped itself inside of the pan on the other side. And when it cooked a little bit and had gotten firmer in its flesh, it rolled out the pan, down the hill, and away from everyone else. "Hi, stop! Won't you stop?" they all yelled, and away went the mother with the frying pan in one hand and the ladle in the other. And so the pancake rolled on and on, even faster and faster, until it ran into a man. And the man said, "Hello, Pancake, how are you?" And the pancake went, "Fine, thank you," in a hurry. And so the man said, "Why don't you stop a bit so I can eat you up?" And the pancake said, No. When I have given a slip to the good man and Goody Putty and the 7 squalling children, I might as well slip through your fingers." And so the pancake rolled on and on, faster and faster, until it ran into a hen. And then the hen said, "Flock, flock, how are you? What are you doing?" And the hen said, "Oh, I'm rolling away." And the hen then said, "Why don't you bite a bit and let me eat you up?" And so the pancake rolled even faster and faster, and on his way down, he said, "I have given a slip to Goody Putty and the good man and the 7 squalling children and Henny Penny, and I might as well slip through your claws." And so he rolled like mad, and he rolled and he rolled and he rolled, until he ran into a pig. "Oink, oink, how are you there, Pancake? Oink, oink," said the pig. And the pancake said, "Well, just fine, thank you." And he rolled and he rolled. He was very afraid. And the pig said, "Nay, nay, don't roll so fast. Why, you're about to go into the woods. And the woods, they say it's very dangerous. Why don't you come with me, and I'll keep you company?" And so the pancake thought, and he said, Okay, it'll be better that way." And so the pig
Soon after, they got to a brook, and the pig looked at the brook and he said, okay, oink, oink, I'll swim. And so he swam across, and the pancake tried to swim across, but it couldn't. So the pig ran out for its rescue, and he said, jump on my snout, and I'll carry you across. And so the pancake thought, and he said, oh, yes, yes, I will. And so he jumped on the snout, and the pig started swimming across, and then when he got to the other side, there was a oof, oof, and the pig had eaten the pancake, and that was the last thing the pancake ever did.
Pecos Bill retold by Stephen Keller. Back in the old days when Pecos Bill was a little baby, his family decided to move west. And one day when they were crossing the Pecos River, he decided to go fishing. So he threw out a line and was dragged out of the wagon by... Can I start over?
Can you start over?
All right, he was dragged out of the boat by a trout.
This is the story of Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby, one of Uncle Remus's stories. Okay. Now, I don't know if you know or not, but, you know, some people stick their noses in where it doesn't belong, you know. They just get into other people's business and they just go along and they just don't know anything of what they're doing. Now, Brer Rabbit, he had this habit of always doing things he had no business doing in the first place. I recollect one time when he was hopping down the lane, happy as a jaybird. Now, Brer Rabbit didn't know it at the time, but over the next hill, Brer Fox and Brer Bear were planning to catch Brer Rabbit. They were making a tar baby. Yes, sir. This tar baby was a mighty fine idea. I sure am glad I thought of this. It won't fool anybody. It hasn't got any hair, said Brer Bear. Brer Fox said, you're right. He snatched some fur from Brer Bear's tail. Yo, said Brer Bear. Now all he needs is your hat, Brer Bear. He took Brer Bear's hat and stuck it on the tar baby. Yes, sir. He looks real fine. Brer Rabbit will sure be surprised. Quick, let's hide. Here he comes. Brer Fox and Brer Bear hid behind a tree stump and waited for Brer Rabbit to come. Soon enough, Brer Rabbit came hopping down the lane. And when he came upon the tar baby, he said, how do you do? But the tar baby said nothing. Now Brer Rabbit thought maybe the tar baby didn't hear him. So he backed up and tried again. I said, how do you do? But the tar baby still said nothing. Now Brer Rabbit couldn't figure this out. He said, I'm going to give you till 3 to say, howdy. 1, 2, 3. But the tar baby still said nothing. And with that, Brer Rabbit hauled off and smacked the tar baby right in the jaw. But his fist stuck in the tar. So he swung and hit the tar baby with his other fist. That stuck too. Then he kicked the tar baby. The madder he got, the more stuck up in the tar he got. He pushed and he pulled. He heaved and he hove, till he got so messed up in the tar, he could scarcely open his eyes. Well, Brer Rabbit couldn't do anything else. So by then, Brer Fox and Brer Bear came out from their hiding place. You sure stuck your foot in it this time, Brer Rabbit. Yes, sir, you are in a real mess. Now, Brer Rabbit, he couldn't use his feet now to get him out of trouble, so he had to think real hard. Brer Bear grabbed a big club and walked over to Brer Rabbit. Let's just smack him in the head. Brer Fox yanked Brer Rabbit out of the tar. No, you don't, Brer Bear. This is my rabbit. I caught him, and I'm going to smack him. Then Brer Rabbit thought of an idea. Sure, Brother Fox, smack me,
But whatever you do, please don't fling me in that briar patch. What's that, Brer Rabbit? Don't throw you in the briar patch? Well, that's just where you're going. And with that, Brer Fox threw Brer Rabbit right smack in the middle of the briar patch. Yes, sir, I sure am glad I thought of that. Brer Fox and Brer Bear stood on the edge of the hill and waited for Brer Rabbit to holler. But instead, what did they hear? Laughter. They thought Brer Rabbit was going to scream and holler, but instead they heard him laughing. Why, Brer Fox, I was born and raised in a briar patch. Yes, sir, Brer Rabbit had fooled them again. Even Brer Bear started to laugh. And Brer Fox, he felt mighty good.
Okay, the title of my story is Wham Jam Jenny Mo Wham by Peggy Hendricks. And we start out, two little children, they're out playing and they hear some rumors that their grandma is a witch and that she's famous for chasing little kids with a crystal ball. And so they wanted to find out if this is actually true. And they went and they asked their mom, they said, "Mama, can we please spend the night with our grandma?" And she said, "No, children, you can't." And they cried and they cried and they cried and they wouldn't give up. So finally their mom gave in. And she said, "All right, y'all can go, but be very, very careful of what you do." And so the little boy, he told his mom, he said, "Well, I'm going to lock up my 12 dogs, and I'm going to take my dog whistle with me, and if they start barking, then you let them out and they'll come help us." And so this little boy and the little girl, they took off to go to their grandma's. And as soon as they got there, it was almost dark, and their grandma, she acted real happy to see them. And, she asked them if she'd like to go inside and meet her two children. And these two children, they were the same size, same age as this little boy and this little girl. And they went in and they met and they talked and they were playing and stuff. And a little bit later, the little boy, he saw his grandma. She was behind the shed sharpening a knife with the grinding wheel. And the little boy, he went up and he asked his grandma, he said, "What you sharpening your knife for?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to kill me a pig." And he said, "Oh, well, can I turn the handle for you?" And she said, "Sure, you turn the handle all you want." And so he sharpened a knife for her while he turned. And finally, it was getting real, real dark, and so she told him to go in and eat, and she'd be in a minute. And whenever she got in there, she told him to go to sleep, and she gave her children a black sheet to sleep with, and she gave the other children a white sheet to sleep with. And finally, the other children, they fell asleep, but the little boy, he didn't fall asleep. And the grandma she told him to go to bed. He said, "But when I'm not sleeping, my grandma gives me a fiddle to play." And so grandma went and got a fiddle, and he played on it, and he played on it. And she told him to go to sleep again, and he said, "Well, I'm not sleeping. When I'm not sleeping, my mama gives me a harp to play on." So grandma went and got a harp, and he played on it and played on it. And finally, he acted like he was asleep, and he heard his grandma, she was snoring. And so he knew that she was asleep, and he woke up his sister and he changed the sheets on the beds so that the white sheet was over the grandma's children, and the little boy and the little girl, they took off. They were running home real fast, and they climbed up a big catflaw tree, and whenever the grandma woke up, she killed her children. She was really, really mad. So she got her crystal ball out of the closet, and she rolled it down one street, and it came back. So she knew they hadn't gone down that street. So she rolled it down another street, and when it didn't come back, she followed it. And the little kids, they were running, and they heard the ball coming after them. So they climbed up a big catflaw tree, and finally the witch, she got there, and she started getting her axe, and she was chopping at the tree, chopping at it, and every time she'd chop it, she'd say, "Wham, jam, Jenny Mo, wham." And every time she would say that, the little boy would say,
Catlipo tree, grow big at the bottom and small at the top. And every time she'd hit it, the chips would just grow back in a tree. And finally, the boy, he blew his whistle and called his dogs, and his mom let him out, and they came running, and she killed all the dogs. And there was just one left. And he jumped at her throat and he killed her. And the children, they climbed down and they cut the grandma's heart out, and they rubbed it on all the dogs' noses, and they came back to life.
My tale's called Indian Tale, and it's by Mark LaFairs. Well, it starts out, an old Indian woman is sitting by her TV with her dog who never sleeps. She's making an old Buffalo Road with designs of porcupine quills. And if ever she finishes this road, it'll be the best in the world. When she gets up to stir a kettle of food. The dog jumps up and it pulls out all the threads, and she has to start all over again. And if the dog ever fails to do this, the world will come to an end.
The name of my story is The Bear Man. The author is D. Brown. And it starts out in the springtime. A Cherokee Indian named Whirlwind is telling his wife goodbye, and he's about to go up in the mountains and hunt. And as he's creeping through the forest, he sees a big black bear, and he shoots an arrow and wounds the bear, but the bear turns and runs. And he chases the bear, shooting arrow after arrow, but the bear doesn't die. And what he didn't know was that the bear could talk and read minds. So finally the bear stopped running and pulled the arrows out and gave them back to Whirlwind. He said, "You cannot kill me. So come with me and I will show you how bears live." "This bear may kill me," Whirlwind said to himself. But the bear said, "I will not harm you." And they went up the mountain walking for hours and hours until they came to a big cave. They walked in and there was bears all over the cave. And he said, the black bear said, "This is a cave where we have our council meetings." And they started talking and everything went quiet and the big white bear came in. He was the chief. He said, "What shall we do about the food scarce in our land?" And all the bears began speaking about what to do. And as the meeting was about to end, Whirlwind and the black bear were about to go to the black bear's home when the chief white bear stopped Whirlwind. He snatched the bow and arrow from his back and tried using them. He said, "Maybe we can use these arrows to defend ourselves." And he pulled the arrow back, pointed it at Whirlwind. And when he let the arrow go, it fell to the ground because his claw caught on the string. So he said, "We cannot use these." So Whirlwind and Black Bear went walking down the mountain and came to a smaller cave. The Black Bear said, "This is where I live." They walked in, and Whirlwind thought to himself again, "I do not see any food." So the bear began moving his paws, and when he turned to Whirlwind, he had food in him. Whirlwind took the food, and the bear continued this until he came with some acorns. And Whirlwind said, "I cannot eat acorns." The black bear told him that soon he would become a bear and learn how to eat them. So a few weeks passed and the black bear came in and told him that the Cherokee Indians had found him and were about to kill him. He told Whirlwind before they caught him for him to, after they killed him, to sprinkle leaves over his blood. So when the Cherokee Indians got there and skinned the black bear and took his meat, Whirlwind went out and covered the blood with leaves, and he started walking off. And when he turned back, he saw the black bear rising from the leaves and walking back in the cave.
And this is the story called Turkeys and Wild Indians. One day, all the settlers from across the seas came over into the American lands. And all the wild Indians were all there, and there was a bunch of wild turkeys. And
whenever the settlers got settled in over on the land, they went turkey hunting. And the wild Indians lived in these little holes in the ground. And whenever the settlers would call out for the turkeys, the Indians would answer back as the turkeys, and they'd try to follow the sound. And whenever one of the settlers came up to where they heard the turkey's voice, the wild Indians would kill him, and they'd never be seen again. Well, one day, one of the old settlers went turkey hunting, and he was calling the turkeys, and some of the turkeys would call back, and he'd follow the sound. Well, he came up to a little hole that he didn't know what it was, and he called for another wild turkey. And an Indian popped up out of the hole, and then the old settler shot the Indian, and that was the last of the wild Indians, and that was the last of all the settlers.
Okay, my story is going to be the story of Paul Bunyan by Barbara Emberly. Okay, and the setting's in Oregon, Washington, South Dakota, and Iowa, and Kansas, all over America. Okay. Once there lived mighty men that were twice as big and twice as strong as any men that you know today. These men were called lumberjacks. Their job was to cut down trees and ship them down to the streams to get chopped up to lumber. Well, the biggest of these men was Paul Bunyan. Paul Bunyan, well, he was the biggest of them all. He was so big that he could pull a tree out of the ground and just comb his black beard. He was so strong that he could pick up a boulder and squeeze the water right out of it. Paul Bunyan was big, but for his size, you'd think he would be slow. But not Paul. Paul was fast. He could race his own shadow, and he could still win. Well, one morning, Paul was cutting down trees to ship them down to New Orleans to get chopped up to lumber. But he thought to himself, how am I going to ship them down there? He thought for a moment and said, well, I'll have to dig a river. So he started digging a river. I think that river is called the Mississippi now. Well, whenever he got older, he took some books and went down to Canada to a cave. Well, that's where he met Babe, his ox. His ox was blue because, well, snowflakes that formed the lakes, well, it fell on top of this ox and it turned him blue. Well, he took in this ox as a pet, and, well, that's where he got the name Babe. From now on, they went across America clearing land for farmers for corn and all that. And they cleared the west for the cattle to graze. And well, after they did all this clearing and all, they laid down to rest. And as far as I can recall, they're still laying at rest.
This is John Henry, Still Driving Man, by Adele Blue. And it takes place in the deep, deep South many, many years ago. One day, many, many, many years ago, there was a little baby boy born. His name was John Henry. This boy was different than most little baby boys in the way that he weighed 40 pounds when he was born. 40 pounds! I mean, people came from all over to see him. Well, people were standing around talking, and to their surprise, he let out something like, "Mammy, I want my dinner. I want 4 ham bowls. I want me a big old pot of turnips, and I want myself a big skillet of fresh biscuits. And to wash that all down, I want me a big old jug of molasses." Well, this surprised everyone, and they were surprised, but they started getting used to him. And as he grew up, he started working on the farm. And when a pig or a goat got out, he'd pick them right up and put them over his shoulder and put them back where they belong. Well, he got tired of this, and it was getting a little bit too easy for him, and he decided that he wanted to go and look for another job. So he went and he traveled for a while, and finally he came upon New Orleans. There, he saw men loading big bales of cotton on big ships. And he saw this, and the boss came up to him, "Son, do you want a job?" Well, he goes, "Well, yes, sir, I think this will be a very mighty good job for me." And the boss goes, "Well, son, I don't think you can handle this, because this is for big men only." "Well, I think I could. In fact, I might be able to beat even you in carrying cotton." So what they did is they were going to try and see who could carry the most cotton. So John Henry got 2 bales of cotton on each shoulder. The boss got 1 on each. Well, the boss saw that John Henry got 2, and so he tried to do that, but it didn't quite work out. In fact, he started to fall in the river. John Henry took his hook, picked him up, and saved his life. And the boss was so thankful, he said, "Son, you got yourself a job here." And so he worked there for a while, and he started getting tired of that. So he went on to look for another job. He said to himself, "I want myself a hammer over my shoulder." And so he looked, and finally he came upon this place where they were laying railroads. He saw these men doing this, and he took the hammer from one guy, the nails from another, and he took the nails and put them in his mouth and filled his cheeks up like this. And he started spitting them right into the metal, and then just as fast, he'd hammer them right in there, faster than anybody else could. And the foreman saw this, and he said, "You're going to work for me." And so he worked there for a while, and one day the foreman came up to him and he said, "We're going to cut ourselves a hole right through that there mountain for the railroad to go through. And we're also going to have ourselves a steam engine to help us." John Henry was kind of upset that he'd think that he needed help. And he said, "Well, sir, I couldn't beat that little steam engine any day." And the foreman said, "I don't think even 20 men could beat that steam engine." And John Henry goes, "Well, I could." So what they did is the steam engine got on one side of the mountain, and John Henry got on the other side, and he had himself 2 big hammers to cut a hole right through there. And they were gonna see who could go the farthest in 25 minutes. Well, they started going, and they were going hard, and it was so tiring that when it was all over, they had to measure to find out who went the farthest. And they finally found out that John Henry went the farthest. And people were so happy for him, and finally they tried to get something out of him, and finally he let out a soft, "There ain't nothing John Henry can do," and then he died.
My book tell is The Battle of Montego Bay, edited by Andrew Lang. Far, far to the west, 1,200 years ago, there were 2 emperors, Charles the Great and Marseille. Charles the Great had been in Spain for 7 long, hard years, fighting to win Marseille's kingdom, called Saragossa. Well, Marseille was very, very foolish, and he could not stand to see his country be put into torture. So he said to one of his messengers, "Go and tell Charles the Great that if he does not bring war upon my land, then I will be baptized into his religion and will offer him the sons of my noblemen." And the messenger was quick, for he knew what would happen if he didn't hurry. And he went to Charles the Great and told him of the message. And Charles the Great sat there, listening to every word, because he was very, very wise. And Charles the Great said, "I have listened to your master, and I trust in his judgment. Tell him to come to the feast of Saint Michel, and then he will be baptized beside me in the river Ebro." And the messenger was quick and ran back to Marseille and told him what Charles the Great had said. But Marseille, having his own thoughts, decided that he would turn against Charles the Great. And Charles the Great declared war on Saragossa. Charles the Great's army was far more powerful, and they fought and fought and fought. And finally, after bloodshed and weeping of wives and children, only 2 people stood, Charles the Great and Marseille. They decided that they would fight it out. And Charles the Great told Marseille, "I'm far wiser than you, Marseille, and I have studied the skill of fencing. Do you dare challenge me?" And Marseille said, "I do. Why, you may be wise and smart. I have street common sense, and I think I could beat you." And there, among the dead bodies and bloodshed, they fought and fought and fought for 12 days. And at the end, the only one standing was Charles the Great, where he fell and went into a sleep. The next morning when he woke, where the bodies and the blood had been, was covered with red cloth.
Okay, this is the story of the 3 Laughs of the Leprechaun by Sean O'Sullivan. Once there lived a farmer. He liked to wake up early in the morning to feed his livestock. Well, one morning the farmer got up and he decided to go wood cutting. After several long hours of wood cutting, the farmer had a seat and took a sigh. Well, to his surprise, he noticed a large mushroom. This mushroom was unlike any other mushroom, because when he lifted the mushroom aside, he noticed there was a leprechaun, and he quickly ran out to seize the leprechaun. Well, he said, "I've been waiting a long time for this, and I will not let you go until you grant me my 3 wishes." "And what would I want to do that for?" said the leprechaun. "Because if you don't, you will cut off I will cut off your head." "Do so," said the leprechaun. "Ugh," said the farmer, and he threw the leprechaun into a special case, locked him up. Well, he took the basket home and threw the basket aside and left him there for 7 years. 3 years passed, and, well, the farmer was out cutting wood again. This time he noticed a really odd-looking piece of timber. This timber was very special to him, so he said, "I can get much money from this piece of timber," he said. Lifting it up, he took it and he sold it for a small amount of money. Well, 4 years had passed since then, and he went up to the leprechaun and said, "Grant me my 3 wishes and give me the fortune of the Danes." "Well, I don't have the Danes' fortune. I wouldn't know where it was if you asked me." "Then I must cut off your head," said the farmer. Do so as well," said the leprechaun. Ugh! He threw the leprechaun back into the basket. Well, 4 years passed, and it was time for the annual country fair, and the farmer was going to go sell some of his cattle. Well, he took off, and he was going to the field to get some money, because in those days, thieves were very prominent, and that was basically the only place you could feel safe to keep your money. So he dug, and he dug, and he dug, and he threw the shovel down, picked up the bank, and took out a small sum of money, placed it back in the hole, and covered it up. Little did he know that while he was taking his money, a thief was watching him. Well, 3 years passed, and so he took out the leprechaun from the basket. "Hand over the fortune of the Dane, or grant me 3 wishes." "But I don't know where the Danes keep their fortune." "Then I must cut off your head." "Do so, as you wish, farmer." So he throws him back into the basket. 4 years passes, and, well, he sees a poor peddler walking this way, and he invites him in for some coffee. "Would you come inside, peddler?" said the farmer. And, well, the peddler looks at him. Okay. While he was making the coffee, he asked him, "Would you care for some breakfast?" And the peddler said, No, I must be on my way." Well, 3 years later, he opens up the basket and he says, "Grant me my 3 wishes, or hand over the fortune of the Danes." "Well, farmer, I have something to tell you." "And what is that?" said the farmer. "I don't think you'd like it. Tell me, or I shall cut off your head." "Do you remember the days where you sold the timber to the man?" "Yes, of course." "Well, there was fortune inside that timber."
And do you remember the time that you went to the field to take the basket of money out? Yes, of course. Well, there was a large sum of fortune, and you missed it, and the thief saw the bank, and he... Well, do you remember the time that you invited the peddler in for some breakfast, and he did not accept? Of course. Well, I handed over the fortune to the peddler. You what? I handed over the fortune to the peddler. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. I wish you were gone. Poof! And there went the leprechaun, laughing away. The end.
My story is called Rap, Rap, Rap. It's from Jimmy B. Wardrobe. It started out with this guy. His name was Reynold Felix Peabody. He was driving his car down the particular road in the southeast corner of the country. It was getting dark, and he was going to go spend the night at someone's house. It looked like there was going to be a storm. The road was going up hills and down hills, when it wasn't turning this way and that way. And he could barely see the road as it is because his headlights were growing dimmer. He could tell that there was something drastically wrong with the battery of his car. And it didn't make it any easier for him to see the road with the hedges growing closer to the street and going really tall. He got farther down the road and he had passed two deserted houses. He got up to the very top of the hill when it started raining. And as soon as it started raining, his car died. And he thought to himself, I can't stay here. I've got to find shelter if there wasn't any place around. He said, well, I thought I saw a house over to my right. And he was sitting there, and he knew he couldn't stay in his car because his car was far from waterproof. So he buttoned up his jacket, and he lifted up the collar, and he made a run for the house. He got up to the front porch, and he could see a light turn on upstairs. He knocked on the door, but there was no answer. All he could hear was the echo of his knock. He knocked again, and there was still no answer. So he decided to turn the knob to see if the door was unlocked. He turned it and it opened. He looked inside and he said, is anyone home? And no one answered. All he could hear was a rap, rap, rap. So he stepped into the front hall and he said, anyone home? And no one answered. But he could still hear the rap, rap, rap. He knew it was coming from up the steps. So he went to the stairs and he lit a match. He started to climb the stairs, and as soon as he got to the platform, his match burned out. So he lit another match and he was going down the hall. The rap, rap, rap was getting louder and louder. There was 3 doors. He had passed 2. And right when he got to the 3rd door, his match went out again. He lit another match and opened the door, and there was another set of stairs leading to the attic. He climbed the stairs, and he was standing on the attic floor. He looked around, and he could see another door. And he knew, and the rap, rap, rap was really loud. And he knew that it was coming from behind the closet door. So he went to the closet door. When he got there, his match went out again. So he lit another match and he opened the closet door. There was a box up on the top of the closet. And he knew, and that's where the rapping was coming from. So he took down the box and he opened it up. It was a roll of wrapping paper.
Okay, the name of my story is Pegasus Bill Discovers He is Human. It's written by Dr. James Bowman. Okay, once upon a time there was a little boy named Crowpair, and he was 2 years old. Now at this time, if they wanted to go anywhere, they had to go in a wagon. And he had 11 brothers and 7 sisters. So when he fell overboard when they were going out of Texas, they had to go in a wagon. When they were
he fell overboard and was captured by a pack of coyotes. And the coyotes raised him as his children. And for all he knew, he was a coyote. And when he was 25 years old, he was finally found, and this is where I start my story. Okay, Cropier was lying on the ground when he heard a noise. He called. He arose and, he turned on his heels and started to run and yelled, "Hey!" And the stranger returned and mimicked his voice. And this only aroused his curiosity even further. So he said it again. He said, "Hey!" So the stranger just mimicked him. "Who are you?" was what he was trying to say. But the words came out as barking. So this began the most amusing dialogue in history. Cropier would bark out a few sentences, and the stranger would answer him by mimicking him perfectly. And an hour or two this went on, and Cropier finally got enough courage to go up there and confront him. He said, "Why, you're just a little baby," said the stranger. And then Cropier said, "I am not." "What are you doing running around here naked like a wild coyote? That's what I'd like to know." "I am a coyote," said Cropier. And then the stranger said, "Coyote, nothing. You're a human, just as I am. Don't you know that coyotes got a long bushy tail? Why, you ain't got no tail, and you know it." For the first time, he looked at himself, and sure enough, there was no tail. So he said, he thought that perhaps it was true. And he said, "No, I won't believe it. I know that I'm a full-blooded Nobel coyote." So he goes, the stranger says, "It's proof you want, is it? Well, come with me and I'll give you all the proof it takes, and that in a hurry." So they go down, he points towards the Pecos River, and he leads his bronco down there. And he said, "Well, there, now look in the river." So he turns, looks in the river. He says, "Who is that? Is that? No, it couldn't be." So then the stranger notices a strange mark on Cropier's arm. It's a gold star. And then the stranger says, "Why, I'd be lost if I ain't got one of them myself." Then Cropier says, "Well, what does it mean?" And the stranger says, "Well, it means I found you. You're my brother, lost brother Bill." And then Cropier says, "Your brother?" And then the stranger says, "Yeah, Dad used to be a patent medicine man, and he learned how to do this here tattooing. Mother thought it'd be a good idea if we put one on each one of us kids." That's all I remember.
This is Stone Soup by Marcia Brown. 3 soldiers were walking in a strange country. They were on their way home from the wars. They were tired and hungry and hadn't eaten for 2 days. Now, they kept marching and marching until they saw the lights of a village. The peasants in this village were scared of soldiers, and they talked among themselves and decided that the soldiers were always hungry, so they decided to hide all their food. They hid the barley under hay and logs. They put cabbages and potatoes under their beds. They had put old quilts over their carrot beds. And they lowered milk down the wells. Finally, the soldiers came and knocked on the first house and asked for some food. The people replied, we have no food for ourselves, and it was a very poor harvest. They knocked on the second house. The reply was similar. We don't have any food. We gave our spare to the soldiers before you. All of our beds are full also, so you can't sleep here. At the next house, they had to use their grain for feed. Finally, the soldiers talked among themselves and decided that they would make stone soup. They asked for a large iron pot, water, fire, and 3 round smooth stones. The stones were placed inside the pot, and it was set to boil. Oh, what some salt and pepper wouldn't do for it. So village children ran and got some salt and pepper, and they brought it back. Oh, but some carrots would make it taste even better. A village lady said she might have a few carrots she could spare, so she ran and brought a whole apron full back. While they were chopping up carrots, they said, oh, cabbage would make it even better, but we won't ask for something you don't have. The village lady spoke up and said she might have some cabbage she could bring back. She went and brought back 3 heads of cabbage. Oh, some potatoes and meat would make the soup fit for a rich man's table. The peasants thought about this for a minute and decided, if it's good enough for a rich man, it's definitely got to be good enough for us. So they ran and got meat and potatoes, and they put it in the soup. Oh, some barley and some milk would make it good enough for the king himself. The peasants thought about this. The soldiers had entertained the king? Well, we'd better make sure that the soup is good enough for the king. So they ran and got barley and milk. Finally, the soup was done. They set up a table and they sat down. Everybody tasted the soup. Such a soup, truly fit for a king. Maybe we ought to set out a whole banquet. So they got roast and bread and cider and spread out a whole banquet. They ate and drank. And they sang and danced far into the night. The soldiers asked for a place to sleep, and the villagers decided they needed the best beds in town. The first soldier slept at the priest's house, the second slept at the baker's house, and the third slept at the mayor's house. The next morning, everyone woke up and greeted the soldiers and sent them on their way. The soldiers were praised for their soup, and they headed on towards home.
This is The Hawk and the Hen by Babette Dush. There was once a time when the hawk and the cock were friends. The hawk and the hen were friends also. And every single time that the hawk would fly down to see his friends in the barnyard, his friends would say, well, how have you been doing? What have you been doing? And the hawk would reply, oh, I've been flying high in the sky, having as much fun as I could ever have. You should try it someday. The cock replied, oh, I can have just as much fun down here in the barnyard. But the hen would love to fly high in the sky, and so she begged and begged the hawk to give her lessons. So the hawk fondly agreed. After several lessons, the hen could barely even fly to the top of the hedge. She was a very slow learner. Now, the hawk was a prince among birds, and he had everything that a hawk would have. That a prince would have. And he had a royal red comb that the fairies wore in olden times. He truly didn't think this was becoming because he didn't like it very much. And second of all, he had a precious necklace of pearls that he loved more than anything. Now, every time that the hawk would come down to give the hen a lesson, she would think to herself, oh, I would love to have all the riches that the hawk has. So soon she told the cock this, and the cock said, well, I have a plan. Next time the hawk comes and gives you a lesson, we will invite him in for dinner. I will put a hint of henbane in his dessert, just enough to put him to sleep. And so the hawk came down, and he had much dessert. And soon he fell fast asleep. Then the hen and the hawk went to work. They stole the pearls and the red comb. The cock got the red comb and stuck it on top of her head, where you can see it today.
And the hen put the band of pearls around her neck. And when the hawk woke up, the hawk got very, very mad and ripped the pearls off the hen's neck. The pearls scattered all over the barnyard. "I'll be back," said the hawk. "I'll be back." Well, the hen thought that the hawk had forgiven her because she hadn't seen her in a while. And in this while, she had 12 precious baby chicks. One day, the hen decided to take her chicks for a walk. And as she was walking, she looked up in the sky and she saw the hawk. She said, "Oh, I never learned how to fly, and neither will my chicks. But that's okay, just as long as the hawk and I were friends. Look, he's coming down to admire my chicks right now." Well, the hawk wasn't coming down to admire the chicks. He was there to get revenge on the hen. So he came down and swooped up the chick and flew away with it. The hen thought about this. Well, she thought, maybe he is still mad at me. How could I get him back as a friend? Well, the hen thought about it and decided to gather all the pearls from the barnyard and string them back together. Then the hawk and the hen would be friends again and the chicks would be safe. So that is where you can see the hen today, picking amongst the corn and the gravel in the barnyard, looking for the pearls.
My story is about Paul Bunyan, the Great Logger, by Tom Lister. Long, long time ago, there was a baby named Paul. And well, as all babies do, when he lay on his back, he would kick and scream and cry and wave his arms. Well, when this baby did that, he knocked down trees, whole trees. And well, as he grew bigger, he started to hurt things. So the authorities thought, well, we need to put him somewhere where he won't hurt anybody. So with the logs he knocked down the previous day, they built a boat, and they anchored him off the shore of Maine. Well, he would rock and sway in that boat, and he liked it. But when he did that, he created waves that crashed up on the shore and almost flooded every town along the New England coast. Well, as he grew bigger, he learned not to hurt people and not to break things. And as you all know, Paul Bunyan invented many things. Like, for once, he had already invented fishing and hunting. And one of his greatest inventions was the logging. So, well, as he was doing the logging, there was lots of things that loggers did that he didn't like. So, one day he invented the two-man saw. Is what they should have said is the eight-man saw. While Paul was on one side using one arm, it took 7 other regular men on the other side just to keep up with him. So, and another thing that, do y'all know how loggers kept their axes sharp? Well, it's what they did is they got at the top of the mountain and pushed a stone off, and they ran along the stone just trying to sharpen their axe. Well, Paul thought this was kind of irrelevant, and he didn't like it. So he invented the grindstone, and the grindstone saved the loggers from a lot of running. And another thing, at the logging site, there would be a small, narrow road with the wagons carrying